And as Westerners, we tend to misunderstand several things about hospitality: the what of hospitality, the when, and the where. So let's talk about those really quick. So we sometimes misunderstand the what of hospitality. We conflate this idea of hospitality with the idea of entertaining, sort of festive entertaining. And the biblical definition, that is, of hospitality is love of strangers. And the Cambridge Dictionary definition echoes this idea: the act of being friendly and welcoming to guests and visitors. The dictionary definition of the word entertaining, however, is the act of inviting people into your home and giving them food and drink. So it's more focused on the action. While entertaining, at least the English word entertaining, is centered on the action of the host, hospitality is centered more on the attitude of the host. So while entertaining, or the way that we talk about entertaining in our culture, is a programmatic performance, hospitality is the practice of presence. While entertaining requires planning in advance and providing a certain level of festivity, the practice of hospitality allows for fluidity. It can be spontaneous. It does not need to include anything special in terms of venue, and it has the focus of simple welcome and togetherness. Hospitality and entertaining can exist side by side, and entertaining is certainly not wrong if someone finds planning events to be enjoyable. But entertaining is not a biblical command, whereas hospitality is. Unfortunately, Western Christians have sometimes let the intimidation factor of entertaining, or the way that we define entertaining, prevent us from engaging in the simple biblical practice of hospitality. Instead of viewing hospitality as planning an event, it should be simply practicing love and welcome and making space for connection. This mentality changes the focus and ratchets down the pressure levels. We can all take a deep breath, a sigh of relief. We also sometimes misunderstand the when of hospitality. When hospitality is mentioned, what typically comes to mind for Westerners is the fact that we should plan to invite another family over for dinner in a few weeks. It is something that can be checked off a list: invite the Johnsons over for dinner. And it's a good thing, and it should indeed be done. But to truly aspire to adhere to biblical qualifications for elders, which most would agree it would be advisable for us all to strive for all believers to strive for, one should not just show hospitality, but should be hospitable. So it says 1 Timothy 3:2, which conveys the idea of being fond of guests, or given to hospitality, or a lover of hospitality. That's the original meaning. This goes beyond the occasional Saturday night get-together, and it points to a lifestyle that's characterized by openness and readiness to receive others. Missionary Del Chinchen tells the story of a missionary couple who shared with him how disappointed they were when, after many years of ministry, which included inviting many Africans to their home in an effort to be hospitable, they were never once invited back in the same manner. And Chinchen asked them to consider that perhaps they should broaden their understanding of what hospitality is. Though inviting someone 2 weeks in advance to eat dinner at your home at a predetermined time and date is indeed a valid expression of hospitality, it's not the only expression. And it's very likely that this missionary couple would have been welcome at any of their African friends' homes at any time. But culturally, it was not seen as necessary to plan a get-together in advance. And indeed, in some cultures, planning in advance implies that there is a distance and a formality in the relationship, as true friends are expected to just drop by unexpectedly. So it can be difficult to even imagine what a life that involves friends just dropping by anytime would look like in our overwhelming, bursting at the seams schedules here in America. And in this paper, I'm not suggesting just this wholesale application of every aspect of hospitality as practiced in non-Western cultures, because it wouldn't be contextual and it wouldn't be realistic. But it is worth considering bending away from some of our cultural extremes in favor of a healthier middle ground, which is informed by other cultures' also valid interpretations of what hospitality can look like. As Westerners, we tend to be overly focused on chronos time. So that's literal minutes and hours. Packing our calendar in a way that theoretically works, but it leaves no time for kairos time, which is God-ordained moments in the spirit of Ephesians 5:16, with the idea of the right or the opportune time. Non-Westerners seem to have more of an understanding of the need to make room for kairos, for surprise and spontaneity and serendipity. Interacting with non-Westerners can wake us up to the dangers of an over-focus on Chronos time and give us insights into what is making room, what it looks like to make room for kairos moments in our actual lives. In his recently published book, Contact, The Shaping Power of Intentional Interactions, Tyler White shares that he worked as a case manager for a refugee resettlement organization, and he used to pick up newly arrived refugees for various appointments because they didn't yet have their driver's licenses. And he would find them not ready to go, but warmly eager to share tea and conversation. And while conversations about the importance of timeliness and appointments in America were in order, White also shares that he wishes he had arrived earlier than necessary in order to be able to accept the refugee family's gracious hospitality, thereby holding Chronos and Kairos time in balance. Rather than viewing our calendars as a zero-sum game where the person who packs the most in wins, we should consider learning from the example of our non-Western brothers and sisters in order to bring our lives more into balance, not by ignoring Chronos time together, but by making room for and protecting the margin in our lives so as to create an openness that is ready for Kairos moments of hospitality, both in our homes and in other locations in which we find ourselves. Hosting a dinner as an isolated incident is something that can be checked off of a list, but being hospitable is not really a task. It's merely creating the context in our lives in which we can focus on people who are nearly constantly in a state of this messy middle, but with whom we can experience God-appointed Kairos moments and understand that meaning in life goes beyond the minutes and the hours ticking by or to-do list items to be completed, but it has to do with journeying through this messy life with others. We also tend to misunderstand the where of hospitality. When hospitality is mentioned, too often our minds go to a space of self-critique. I know mine does. There's too much clutter in our homes, or we don't have enough space, or we have an embarrassing propensity to order pizza rather than cook after work, or our children's energy level is maniacal, or we're not sparkling conversationalists when we're tired. There are so many self-critical reasons for barring our doors so that they can't open and welcome guests. But because hospitality is not about entertaining or about image, we can free ourselves from the stranglehold of perfection, recognizing that things will never be perfect enough for us to feel entirely comfortable opening our homes. It is a vulnerable thing to do, no matter what. Opening our homes requires vulnerability, and it often includes awkwardness. And we fear awkwardness because we have forgotten that awkwardness is the precursor to connection or to intimacy of any kind. When we shy away from awkwardness, we're left with loneliness. In any well-told story, there's a scene, think about your favorite stories, there's a scene, or at least one scene, where readers and viewers are privy to the moment when acquaintances decide to become friends, or when friends decide to band together and fight a common enemy so they become a team, or accomplish a goal, or there's a moment when people who just know each other before, suddenly they fall in love. Almost always these moments involve some awkwardness, don't they? Because there's this moment when the questions, are we all in? Are we moving deeper into relationship with each other in whatever way, have been asked, and the answer has not yet been given. So depending on how this powerful moment is viewed, it can be frightening or it can be exciting. If we view the force of awkwardness as frightening, then we'll become like the side of a magnet that just repels others, right? But conversely, if we view the force of awkwardness as exciting, we will become like the side of a magnet that is drawn to others and whom others are drawn to. So the point of hospitality is to make exciting moments of awkwardness possible, and then to move through them towards the beautiful landscape of deepening relationships on the other side. The antidote to awkwardness is to think about the other person, which incidentally is something that a good host always does. So if we stop thinking about ourselves and how our homes look and what a conversationalist or not we are, and start thinking about the other people, a lot of the awkwardness will also go away. Though it's worth saying that our homes don't need to be perfect in order to invite others in, I think it should also be mentioned that hospitality need not be limited to our homes. Since hospitality is primarily about an attitude, not an action or a location, it can be shown in third spaces and even when one is a guest in another's home. Hospitality is not one way, right? To be a good guest requires a kind of hospitality because since, after all, we must learn to pay careful attention and to receive others and receive their norms and ideas, Scott Hagley shares. For the Christian, he says, hospitality provides an image of the gospel. We are simultaneously the guest and the host of the triune God. And so also we relate to one another in a fluid interchange between guest and host. So with immigrants in particular, it can be more hospitable to be a guest in their homes than to invite them to be a guest in ours. When inviting immigrants to our home, we're also expecting them to conform to our norms, eat our kind of food, and follow our agenda. And this is not to say that inviting immigrants into our home is a bad idea. It should absolutely be done. But visiting should also be a two-way street. By also enthusiastically being a guest in immigrants' homes, we are willingly shouldering the burden of discomfort and accepting the pressure of learning a new way of doing things. Becoming a grateful guest is powerfully communicating to an immigrant friend that we welcome them, not just when they're trying hard to conform to our culture's expectations, but also exactly as they are in their own homes, living as they naturally do.